Gift-wrapped body parts, thousands of dead fish, a massive fossil skull from a 150 million-year-old sea predator. These are disturbing things that washed up on shores around the world. First up, we have remains of ancient marine animals like this one here, the skull of a pliosaur that washed ashore in 2023. They pulled this thing out of the cliffs on Dorset's Jurassic coast, and just look at how intact it is. It's basically a complete skull. Pliosaurs lived about 150 million years ago. The skull alone was over 2 meters long, longer than most people are tall. Steve Etches, the paleontologist who worked on it, said, quote, "It's one of the best fossils I've ever worked on. What makes it unique is it's complete. The lower jaw and the upper skull are meshed together as they would be in real life. Worldwide, there's hardly any specimens ever found to that level of detail," end quote. And look at the teeth. They are terrifying, all 130 of them. Razor sharp with little ridges that help sink into its prey and tear them apart. And at 10 to 12 meters long with huge flippers, this thing was basically the underwater version of a T-Rex. Dr. Andre Rao from Bristol University said, "The animal would have been so massive that I think it would have been able to prey effectively on anything that was unfortunate enough to be in its space," end quote. In terms of how they found this thing, a friend of Etch's spotted the tip of the snout on a beach near Kimmeridge Bay. Too heavy to move, they came back with a stretcher. Now for a much more gruesome story. Back in June, Kevin Ewing and his family were walking along Dash Point Beach in Washington, celebrating Father's Day, when he spotted this small box wrapped in green cloth with a yellow string. It looked like a Christmas present. At first, I thought it'd be a prayer bundle or some type of message in a bottle, Ewing told the press. Curiosity got the better of him, so he opened the box. Well, inside was a severed human big toe wrapped in a rag, along with a small blade, a feather, grass, sage, lavender, and tobacco. At first, I was very shocked, and it took me a few minutes to kind of be like, is that what I think it is? Then once it dawned on me, I set everything down, said Ewing. Nearby, he noticed a seagull that appeared to have been skinned and mutilated. Can't say for sure if the two were connected. Washington State Patrol took over the investigation, though, and the toe was sent to the King County Medical Examiner for a DNA match. According to police, the toe is the same size as that of an adult male. Severe decomposition, so this is not thought to be from a recent amputation. Ewing left the area after the discovery, worried that someone could be nearby, and just hopes the person it belonged to is eventually identified. Back in mid-August, people walking along the shores of Lake Erie in Ontario got a nasty surprise when they found thousands of dead fish scattered along the beaches. Most of them were sheepshead, also called freshwater drum. It wasn't just Canada. On the US side near Erie, Pennsylvania, hundreds of freshwater drum were found dead as well. Before they died, witnesses were watching them swim sideways and struggling to stay upright. Park staff had to use pitchforks to clear the beaches. Michael McKay from the Great Lakes Institute for Environmental Research said it was due to, quote, thermal stress from what's called an upwelling in hypoxic zones, so patches of water with very low oxygen. Cooler water from deeper in the lake gets pushed toward the shore, and fish that can't escape end up suffocating. Apparently this isn't rare, it happens every few years. Research shows hypoxic zones are expanding around the world as well, doubling roughly every decade since the 60s. And just this past spring, Lake Huron's beaches were suddenly covered with dead fish. People living along the shoreline were posting photos of pale, ghostly carcasses online. Most of the fish were gizzard shad, a species that normally sees seasonal die-offs, but were also dead rainbow smelt, rainbow trout, yellow perch, northern pike, long-nosed gar, largemouth bass, and mud puppies, a type of salamander that doesn't normally die off in spring. Federal authorities called it a routine spring die-off, but marine biologists were kind of concerned. Jennifer Powell, a University of Toronto PhD candidate studying endangered fish, told reporters, quote, "This is a really nasty fish disease. It can wipe out a huge number of fish." Powell thinks it could be caused by viral hemorrhagic septicemia, or VHS, saying that the images of fish bleeding from their sides and mouths is, quote, consistent with some of the hemorrhages that can be seen with VHS. These spots don't show up all the time, but they can be a sign, end quote. VHS was first reported in Lake Ontario in 2005. It has since spread to Lake Huron, Georgian Bay, Lake Erie, and Lake Simcoe. Luckily, it only affects fish though. Warning to all you Texans in the audience, don't step on a venomous sea worm when you're hanging at the beach. In August 2024, beachgoers on Mustang Island in Texas got a surprise they definitely didn't want. Researchers from the Heart Research Institute at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi, found rare venomous sea worms washing up on large logs along the shore. The institute warned people on Facebook, writing, quote, "Warning, your worst nightmares are washing up right now in the form of fireworms." How comforting. The Heart Research Institute said they got their name because of the pain they inflict on anyone that touches them. Apparently, it literally feels like fire for about 3 hours, and even after that, your skin can be sensitive in the area we're stung for weeks. Their white bristles are filled with neurotoxin, which breaks off when touched. You could also cut one in half, and they'll regrow. Fireworms live anywhere from 2.5 to 9 years and feed on crustaceans like barnacles. Found across the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and the Gulf of Mexico. In September of 2024, people along the beaches in Newfoundland started spotting hundreds of these weird white blobs, and at first nobody knew what they were. But then Chris Kozak, a chemistry professor at Memorial University, ran some tests with his graduate students in what they called Project Unknown Glob. Kozak discovered the blobs were not natural. They were man-made, likely some type of synthetic rubber. He told CBC News the substance is probably made of stuff usually found in adhesives like glue and certain nail polish coatings. The good news, they weren't toxic and were safe to handle, they just smelt kind of weird. Kozak also said there could be lots of these blobs on the ocean floor and animals could mistake them as food. No, these are not AI-generated images. In 2023, Japan's beaches were buried under dead fish. Over 1,000 tons of sardines and mackerel washed ashore in 2 spots. First in Hakodate on Hokkaido, officials warned people not to eat the fish, but some people were still picking them up to sell or eat. A few days later, the same thing happened at Nakiri fishing port in Mei Prefecture. This time with Japanese scaled sardines called sapa. A fisherman who's been working there for 25 years said, "I've never seen anything like this before. It was only around last year that we began to catch sapa in Nakiri. Makes me feel the marine ecosystem is changing." Scientists have some idea as to what's going on here. Takashi Fujioka from the Hakodate Fisheries Research Institute thinks the fish may have suddenly entered a patch of cold water, or maybe predators chased them into crowded schools where they just ran out of oxygen. People also started to wonder if Fukushima's nuclear power plant, which started releasing treated wastewater 3 months earlier, could have had to do with this, but the fisheries agency insisted that wasn't the case. I mean, still though, seeing mountains of dead fish like this is pretty alarming. You don't often picture great white sharks washing up on shore in Canada, but back in October of 2024, a BC couple, Leslie Assu and her husband Jamie Clark, heard that a great white had washed up nearby their home. When they arrived, the shark's body was still fresh, bleeding from its dorsal fin to its tail. It was enormous, and Asu noticed it had at least one dead seal in its mouth. "It was huge," she said. "I never thought in my life I'd be able to walk up and see a great white in person." Scientists from Fisheries and Oceans Canada confirmed it was a male great white by examining its teeth and tail fin. These sharks are rare to see in BC, but they do occasionally show up along the outer coast feeding on seals. Now, what in the hell is this thing? So back in 2023, a woman in New Zealand's North Island came across this while on her morning walk. Kylie Mormon was strolling along the beach when she came across a massive log covered in strange sea creatures. It had worm-like tentacles and living creatures in the shells, Mormon said. Other folks were just as fascinated. One woman said she was intrigued by the log's, quote, alien-like appearance and wanted to know what it could be. Turns out the weird log was completely covered in gooseneck barnacles. Wilma Blom from the Auckland Museum explained that they're most likely Lepus antifera. What looks like slimy tentacles are really long stalks, kind of like little stems that attach to floating debris. Each one is its own animal. At the end of the stalk is the main body, protected by small shell plates. It can grow pretty big too, up to 2.5 feet long. A Department of Conservation spokesperson said that while it does look strange, these barnacles are pretty common around New Zealand. And finally, in July 2023, this massive metallic cylinder washed up in Greensand, Western Australia. Authorities and the Australian Space Agency had no clue what it was. The Australian Space Agency tweeted, "The object could be from a foreign space launch vehicle, and we are liaising with global counterparts who may be able to provide more information," end quote. Police also asked the public to stay away from it, as it was being treated as hazardous. Investigators found heavy barnacle growth on one side of the cylinder, meaning it had been out at sea for a pretty long time. Turned out, it was actually from space. It was space debris, part of an Indian rocket launched by the Indian Space Research Organization. The cylinder was one of the stages discarded during the rocket's flight. Well, that's going to do it for today. That's been the video. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next one.